Well, hello everyone. Here to show you the 30-second signature is like a activity right here. Is basically with this activity that shown right here is like for 30-second signature is knowing about for most of the time if we know about for most signatures if it's going to be like say an electronic signature or any kind of signature and knowing about for most of them that only take up anything about 30 seconds of our time and knowing about that you have right here is like a box right here and a lot of times with these signatures you have right here are about 4 5 or so different writing pens, but a lot of times that you see right here is that with the signature box kind of like that right there, to where if you want to go ahead and sign something, if it's like an agreement or if it's a doctor's note, like if you were to go to the doctor or maybe the dentist, or if you were to insurance company, or maybe for a loan, or going to school, that type of stuff. And knowing that for the most part is like it's like for most signatures though that they ask you like for your abbreviation at about right here. I'm like that, yeah, that for how you sign, and it knowing about I'm like that you have right here. Go ahead and do like which says like a signature and like that, right there, and knowing that I'm like, yeah, that more like those will be like says like more like the initials. But let's just say that with most of the time with most signatures, if you're going to be signing something and knowing about that a lot of times that a lot of people would more likely say that if you sign something, especially if it's the insurance company or if it's school related, job related, that type of stuff, and knowing about that they may say that really, I'm like, what is the difference between it, like writing your name on your paper. I'm like, if you were to be turning your assignment, your initial would be look more like this right here, and then by the time that you go to the dentist, or maybe signing if it's maybe contracts or anything like that, or if it's a bill or anything like that, the signature would more likely look something like this right here. But then on your hand that I'm like, yeah, that says something like that right there, and knowing that for the most part is like for 30 seconds, quite a few times, like they usually say whenever you go file your taxes though, that a lot of times that if you ask an actual office to file your taxes, a lot of times that they ask you like to sign this form here, that type of stuff. And knowing that you have these 3 different writing pens, and knowing that some applications that they say that they want the application to be completed using a bold a bold a ballpoint pen or something like that, if it's between black and blue, those type of pens. And knowing that for the basic rules of if you would be collecting food stamps or anything like that, and knowing about any forms that they want you to sign, a lot of times it requires a signature. And besides like the date, like that they say that be sure to put the date, and then even if the date was not included, that they say that the sign and date, it's like for like August the 13th right here. And knowing about that that for the most time it's like that everything they talked about for the agreement, they want you to sign and date something, and for the most part that takes about 30 seconds. And a lot of times they're like wondering that 30 seconds does not give me enough time to know about the rules, and more likely they say that, well, for whatever agreement is, if it's going to be maybe a loan, or maybe start of a job, or maybe something about maybe real estate, something like that we always think about, is like have to think twice about, was that a mistake to sign the form, and knowing if it's going to be maybe collecting unemployment or anything like that, and knowing about for 30 signature, and knowing about that I'm sure most kids, I'm like, yeah, that the teenager, adults, knowing about for most signatures, they usually say that I'm like, yeah, that we know that the signatures, signatures, they are not toys. I'm like that don't sign no papers. They usually say that don't sign this. Don't sign that paper, and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that can get you in trouble. That type of stuff. But just knowing about that for most time with signatures though, that knowing that, let's just say if the signature has nothing to do with whatever amount of money that's owed back, but then they may say that, yeah, that you know, you're borrowing money and then you sign something, and then knowing about that, you know, you may say that most kids, you know, who are 18 years old or maybe 17 years old will probably say that whenever that they grow up and they want to get on their own, they can make their own decisions, they're going to go ahead and sign something. And for the most part, you know, it takes about 30 seconds, but then on your hand too, that knowing about, like, yeah, it's like if for, you know, if you've done it, you know, if we maybe done it at least 30 times, it's like, a lot of knowing about, like, yeah, that, you know, for any forms that you do sign, that knowing about, like, yeah, that, you know, well, you know, that there was something that you signed, or if it was something that, you know, copies of or anything like that with the signature on there. And a lot of times we're like wondering that that they collected a signature from you, but then of course they did not collect any type of identification. And anybody say that, yeah, well, you know, that they don't have any type of identification so far as any type of ID, knowing about that, if it was out of state or any type of, you know, driver's license information, you know, that type of stuff. So in a lot of ways, the way I think about it, though, is that knowing about with 30-second signature is knowing that the type of stuff that you could be working on if it's in class or something like that, and knowing that I'm like, yeah, signing it was a mistake, but then on the other hand too, that knowing about that, you know, for whenever you do complete the course and then get on the insurance plan, you know, that type of stuff. And most insurance companies, I'm sure most of us know them, like with most insurance companies, that they say that there's a few forms that you guys sign, and they says that, yeah, well, you had to sign this, you know, in order to be able to keep the insurance, you know, maybe if it's a medical insurance, you know, that type of stuff, you know, that they say that, you know, just like what you call is like maybe renting an R-rated movie, that knowing about, you know, films that cannot be shown between under mature audiences, and, you know, for kids or that type of stuff, you know, for PG-13, you know, that type of stuff, but maybe that, you know, not all you know, insurance, not all, you know, like insurance, you know, not all signatures, I guess, are bad. That they say that they are required, especially if it's in school, though. That they say that any information that they need to collect, you know, such as, you know, forms, you know, from the previous schools, or maybe, you know, other types of insurance cards, and knowing about that with a signature, though. That they say that, yeah, well, do you need a down payment or do you need a signature? And more likely say that, yeah, well, you know, that some that may say that, no, we need a down payment before you can sign something. But on the other hand, that I can remember that, yeah, getting my driver's license, if I can remember right, that you know, they had to a couple of times that they had to discard a form, you know, because that you know, couldn't pay it or something like that. Yeah, that, you know, some sorts of situation to where if you're filing your taxes, and they said that the signature usually takes about 30 seconds, you know, that's complete. But then on your hand too, that knowing about, I'm like, yeah, for, you know, the transaction, if you're paying by Visa, a lot of times that may take up to 40 seconds, maybe 50 seconds to complete. So it's like knowing about that, knowing that with most visas, though, that yeah, for how long it takes to sign something and how long it takes to pay for something, and we're on average, let's just say it's 30 seconds. But then on your hand too, that knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that whenever you sign something, that they usually say that that really, that, you know, this 30-second signature usually change anything. And for the most part, they may say it all depends, but then on your hand too, that knowing, I'm like, yeah, could that buy you a step forward? Possibly. But then on your hand too is knowing about, you know, to make everybody know, I'm like, that knowing about, you know, how important it is that with the signature. A signature is not what you call a playful autograph. It's like, it's not a playful autograph to where that if you are around a few friends and then they ask you to sign something, you know, they ask you to sign something, you know, such as, you know, put your initial, can you sign my picture, you know, can you sign, you know, the poster, you know, it's like, hey, can I get an autograph? Like, you know, yeah, this is not like what you call like a playful type situation, to where most signatures, that they say that basically what do signatures usually mean? It's basically, it's like a signature. It's like basically, you know, it could mean like, for you say an agreement. Agreement upon the decisions for if it was anything that was related to a meeting, if it was a meeting, or it could also mean for other things that are important, and knowing about. I'm like, yeah, whenever you go file your taxes, and whenever you go to the doctor, a lot of times that they ask for a signature, and for most of the time that they say that hey, we don't need it written in blood or nothing like that, but then on your hand, that knowing that the type of a pen that they give you, sometimes that they could say that, yeah, well, a signature. And knowing about, with most of the time with most autographs and signatures, though, they say they usually take up to 30 seconds to do, just to sign something if it's electronically. But just knowing about that, the whole purpose about whenever you sign something is knowing that just like if you were to spend $30 or maybe $300, that they say that, yeah, that can get you in trouble. That can get you in big trouble. But then on your hand, and knowing about with most signatures, though, is that knowing about, like, yeah, that as long as you had some source of paperwork, such as copies of anything, and as well as knowing about what was it for. And on your hand too, that knowing about, like, yeah, that some people that may say that, what was it for? To do our homework. I did my homework, and then I know what I'm doing. So the form proven is knowing about. It's like they basically say it's agreement, or if it's the release of any type of insurance plan or anything like that. But just knowing about, to encourage anybody that even if it takes only 30 seconds, is knowing about exactly about where the signature needs to go, and as well as the date, and then for what was discussed as well, and then knowing about for how how the plan arrangements were settled. But other than that, is knowing about, anybody probably say that, yeah, that you may hear about that, knowing about which I like to sell something, and more likely say that, yeah, well, if you were to be selling postal cards, or if it's Girl Scout cookies or anything like that, and knowing about, like, yeah, that really about that they say that, well, if you're selling anything or maybe collecting anything, and knowing that I'm like, yeah, for like signatures. But if you were to work at any stores that they ask you to you collect source of information to help customers, it's like with their orders, that type of stuff. But other than that, I talk about, say, for 30-second signatures, I talk about, say, writing activity.